Welcome to the Business of LoRaWAN, where we dive into this long-range, low-power, wide-area network and its impact on your bottom line, the latest sensors, and proven real-world solutions. I'm your host, Nick Hawks. Since 2020, when I stumbled into LoRaWAN via Helium while hunting for a lost paraglider, I've helped thousands understand how it works and how to use it, and I'm psyched to do the same for you. I've installed everything from soil sensors to weather stations to retail foot traffic counters, coming to the conclusion that LoRaWAN is rad. So I built the only show on the internet fully dedicated to unlocking its potential for your business. Let's dig in. Today on the Business of LoRaWAN, we're diving into the world of real-world, high-impact IoT with someone who's been at the forefront of deploying smart sensor networks in places that actually need them. Not just to automate toasters, but to save lives and disrupt crime. My guest today is Dean Marsh, currently IoT Specialist at UK Connect, a company building secure connectivity and IoT infrastructure across the UK, from construction sites to social housing. Dean's career is a fascinating journey through the trenches of public sector innovation. He started out in IT at a housing association in rural Wales, where he helped deploy one of the earliest LoRaWAN-based monitoring systems in the UK and in social housing. That included battery-powered sensors tracking things like humidity and temperature to flag issues like mold or dangerously cold homes. From there, he moved to Connection, where he helped roll out what's likely the densest LoRaWAN network in the UK, connecting millions of smart utility devices across cities and rural areas. Now at UK Connect, he's bringing those same capabilities to construction, tackling health, safety, and compliance through scalable, real-time IoT. In this conversation, Dean shares how a simple temperature sensor helped save an elderly man's life and how anonymous people counter data led to uncovering a pattern of drug gang activity. Stories that remind us just how powerful these systems can be when placed in the right hands with the right intent. This one's about scale, impact, and unexpected insight. Let's get into it. Dean, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Hi, thank you, Nick. Great to meet you.
Yeah, I'm psyched to have you on. Let's start the journey. You've been in LoRaWAN as long as almost anyone I've met for sure. I think it's back in 2017 you started using it, maybe earlier. What was it about it that caught you and got you really interested?
Yeah, that's right. Almost 10 years now. So back in 2016, 2017, I was working within social housing in the UK. I spent most of my career within the sort of IT sector. So at the Housing Association in Wales, we had quite a unique sort of problem, really. So we had roughly 5,000 properties scattered all across Wales. So there's a lot of traveling there. The sort of staff, they found out about problems before it was too late. So it's reactive. So, for example, a property would be abandoned or a leak in there. Then by the time it was sort of notified and they found out, a lot of damage in place. And we always used to talk, what if we could get data from these assets and turn the reactive into proactive? And about that time, we were quite lucky. We saw LoRaWAN sort of coming on the scene in Europe. What's all this about? We talked about it previously, where we'd have to sort of hardwire the properties and put cable in, and that wouldn't work. We couldn't use the tenant sort of internet. So we saw this new technology emerge, LoRaWAN. So we just went ahead and bought a gateway and a load of sensors. We didn't have absolute clue what we were doing at the time. It was quite an exciting adventure. So we installed the gateway onto the headquarters in a small town. Bit of a learning curve there. We hired a cherry picker. We did the work ourselves on top, made sure the antenna was good, and then connect that was in place. So we started to roll out these environmental sensors. I think they were ELSIS, ERS, temperature, humidity, CO2. So we started to roll those out into the properties, into the homes in the area, about 100 to 150 at the time. And then all of a sudden, we started getting this data from the homes there, and it was absolutely fascinating. We could see instantly the homes which were abandoned, and we didn't realise they were abandoned. Fuel poverty in the UK, a lot of people are on the breadline. They've not got enough money to heat the homes. Where there's a lot of grants available, and we could instantly see these homes. They've been below sort of 10 degrees centigrade for a week. So with that data, we started to send the housing officers out, and it kind of opened up this whole new way of working for us. And there was so much excitement going on internally. We got shortlisted for sort of many awards, and actually we had a bad winter in the UK around about that time. I think it was called Beast from the East, and we saw one property in particular. The temperature went below 0 degrees for a week. So yeah, we sent a housing officer out there, and the elderly gentleman, he was hypothermic at the time. So yeah, we potentially saved a life there with the data. So what LoRaWAN suddenly enabled us to do was get all this data from our houses really quickly, easily to deploy. We didn't need to rely on SIM cards. The batteries, because the nature of LoRaWAN is such low power, the batteries with sort of a half an hour sampling rate can last up to sort of 10 years. So it just enabled us to kind of open this whole new kind of world of working. As a couple of years gone on, we started to roll out more sensors into homes, getting all this data and learning from the data as well. We made a big kind of impression in the scene. I think we were one of the first in the UK to actually do that. Very exciting. And then we started to look at the compliancy side, all those sort of manual things people were doing, going out in vans. In the UK, you have to test your emergency lighting once a month by law. You have to do the Legionella risk assessment as well, where you're measuring temperature of the taps and recording that. And we're thinking, well, okay, we've kind of got the architecture here now. Can we actually automate these things? And yeah, we could. So we set about to begin with automating our emergency light testing. So we looked at the figures, and we were spending roughly over £100,000 a year on emergency lighting alone. So we started to target these blocks where they were coming up for the renewal of the components, and we started to put in these LoRaWAN enabled emergency lights, and that enables us to do the testing over the air, generate its own reporting. It would literally land in the inbox every month for the staff to onboard, and we realized, wow, okay, people are not going out in vans anymore. That's a huge CO2 print we just saved. And then we sort of understood, okay, part of the rent the tenants are paying, there's a service charge element there. They're actually paying for the emergency light testing, and that got removed. So it reduced the rent in these blocks, which was absolutely brilliant there. So I started to find an area. I'm a big problem solver. I love looking at things. People have been doing the same for years and saying, right, can we actually make this better? Um, and it kind of took off from me there. I got headhunted for another job. Um, Start to do more of the housing side and take that kind of skill set there on a mass deployment in the UK. And past 2 years, there's a huge momentum in the UK for LoRaWAN. A lot's under the radar. A lot of the street lighting is LoRaWAN enabled. I'd say almost 90% of water meters in the UK are LoRaWAN. A lot of support with the Welsh government. They've rolled out gateways to all the towns and villages. So you've got this coverage absolutely everywhere.
Oh, that's fantastic. I had no idea it was so deep across the UK. So let's see, 2017 you find it, you kind of work through till 2022 at the what was Mid Wales Housing, and then changed to another company.
Yes, it merged with another housing association called Tyke Ceredigion at the time,
That's
and then
right.
became Barkit. And at that time, I'd worked in IT all my life. I'd kind of gone from sort of the days of Novell Network, NT4. I'd seen this, but the IoT, it just kind of really. I think my mind is kind of geared for IoT and those problems there. So I found an area I actually really enjoy. It didn't feel like a job anymore. Um, yeah. The past 2 years, working with the majority of the water utility companies in the UK, basically deploying massive scale LoRaWAN networks, millions of devices. And for the water utility companies, it's basically going from where they're getting a handful of reads every year to hourly reads, which made a huge difference. They can detect where leaks are automatically, other anomalies, and that was very exciting. Very exciting. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so the really big savings from the business side, like I always like geeking out on the tech side just because it's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
But it's also important for folks who are watching this to say, okay, how would I use LoRaWAN to make or save money? Is what I'm hearing you're saying is over and over, you were able to find when you deployed LoRaWAN sensors, you immediately had labor savings. And then there was also a piece that's built on top of that where you start to have a much clearer picture, much more up-to-date picture of what's actually happening, and then can make better business decisions off of that. Is it those are the two main areas that you're seeing as kind of business beneficial for LoRaWAN?
Yeah, the key that the customer doesn't really care so much about the sort of the jargon, the buzzwords, the connectivity. You've got to go in there, look at their manual processes, find their pain points. And I think that the main battle I've come across is actually making the customer or potential customer understand there is a problem to begin with. They won't actually realize this technology exists to automate. an area. So you want to look at all their processes. LoRaWAN typically, where you've got manual things going on, obviously infrequent sort of so once a week or once a month, but massive scale, across many locations there. So to look at those pain points, um, you've got to understand, you've got to speak the language of ROI to the customer. They want to see, right, I'm spending £2 million a year with this kit going in. How quickly is it going to pay for itself, and there onwards as well. And it's not just sort of reduction of cost as well. You'll see a lot of CO2 reduction as well. So in the UK with decarbonisation, ESG, a lot of the solutions will tick that box as well. So that's a very important to consider. But you've got to understand them pain points, get them out, and then work the technology around that.
Got it. So when you're going into a new customer, talking to a new customer, do you have a series of questions that you ask? Like, hey, how much is your labor? What's your highest top line expense? Are there any things that you like over and over when I ask this question, I almost always find a problem I can solve?
Yes, exactly. Spot on. I like to kind of try and put myself in their shoes. I'll go out to site, spend a day with them, and see what they're actually doing. And then you start to kind of understand the picture. And another key area as well, and I see a lot of IoT projects fail, but they're not because of the solution and the technology. That's absolutely perfect. But when you've got a business and they've been doing these processes have been in place for 20, 30 years, these manual processes, they need to be almost completely erased and rewritten to deal with this proactive approach of data coming in. And I've seen a lot of failures in the UK where they've just not rewrote the processes and expected it to work with IoT. For example, with your automated compliance in housing, you want to get it to a point where, okay, all the testing's been done automatic, and then it's fed into your existing management system and it updates the component. It takes away that admin side there, so it completely automates the entire process, and that's where you get massive wins and adoption.
Yeah, and let's see, Connection recently, I think, announced a partnership or preferred partnership with Daisy. And so I'm seeing, if I'm getting this right, that these companies who are providing the connectivity are partnering with companies who are providing the kind of enterprise IoT, maybe visualization and management side. And that's going to be this trend of like, hey, not only should you roll these things out and get the data in, but here's how you manage the data to make your business better. Are you seeing the same
Yeah,
thing, or am I just missing something because I'm new to the industry?
no, that's absolutely correct. So yeah, at UK Connect, we're thinking, okay, long term with large scale deployments, it's we need to think about, right, okay, let's take for example, say we're doing a telegraph pole monitoring solution for either electric or fiber, and we've got 20,000 poles we want to fix sensors to. Okay, for one, you've got to build the project into the application, and Daisy, it's brilliant for this. So you'd load the project in with your 20,000 poles and the GPS location there. Then you'd load your sensors in into a repository. There's a mobile phone app for doing the install. So basically, what happens at that point there, you push the jobs out to the engineers. They know exactly where to go. They scan the sensor in to that location, so it takes the human element error out. Because if you go to the wrong location and trying to scan the wrong sensor, it just doesn't let you. So Daisy's a key area, a key kind of component in your system to ensure that you're managing the project correctly, you provision the devices, you can see they're working okay. And what I love about it, it's got that flexibility to integrate easily into existing applications. Because you see a lot of the time with an enterprise customer, they don't want new dashboards or applications. They want to use their existing Power BI or whatever's behind the scenes, and they just want to parse the data, so it accepts it, and that process then Daisy makes that really easy to do.
Got it. And thank you for the correction. That's UK Connect. That's not Connection that
Yeah, that's
partner with Daisy. Okay. Super, super cool. What are the biggest problems that you see in LoRaWAN and kind of the business of LoRaWAN? Is it yeah, what are you seeing where it's like, man, I wish we could solve this?
biggest problems. I'd say it's it's usually sort of like a culture shift, really. It's more. How can I explain it? Sometimes it's sort of psychology. People don't like change. Some people don't like change. I'd say that's the biggest obstacle. The technology works great. As long as you, for a massive rollout, you do all your RF planning, make sure the gateways are installed to spec and everything's done right there. and you'll find it's absolutely solid. I'd say on like the actual selling the product, it's it's making sure that you can speak the language of the customer in ROI. The technology side, yeah, it just works.
Got it. Okay, so the biggest problem, and this is what I seem to encounter over and over, is just explaining to the customer what this unlocks for them. And it sounds like you've got a really good setup down where it's like, hey, this will unlock labor savings and this will unlock new data insights that will be important for your business. Okay.
Yeah, just following on from what you said, it's you've got to put yourself in the shoes of that customer and understand it from their point of view, and don't go just take out the jargon completely.
Yeah, fair enough. It's as much as I love talking about uplinks and the rest of it. As soon as I
Yeah,
touch
same as you.
any of that,
I love that.
yeah. Let's see.
Yeah.
So some nerd stuff. I saw you're into energy harvesting. That seems like the next big thing in sensors in general is just getting rid of the batteries and making sure that we're using the energy that's kind of on site. For that, is that true? And is there anything else that you're seeing that's coming down the line that you're really excited about?
Yeah, that's a great point, actually. A massive fan of the new sort of second generation energy harvesting sensors coming out. So, you've got to think if you're rolling out thousands or millions of devices, you've got lithium batteries going into each. And if you can get around that with energy harvesting, it's key. For example, I've used a lot of the utility hot drop, the energy harvesting CT clamps. For example, where you've got a large commercial building, you can get those in real quick. They just kick off, send the data through, and that they're brilliant. There's a number of environmental sensors as well, which do energy harvest. So great area, really, really closely following
Yeah,
that.
super cool. And do you have any? You mentioned one of them. Do you have any other preferred ones? The only one I've seen that I've had in my hands is the LSys. I think it's a ERS CO2 monitor. I mean, I know there's thousands out there. I just haven't touched a bunch of them. Is there anything where you're like, oh, this one works really well?
A French company, Nexelec, their hardware, their LoRaWAN hardware is absolutely, sort of Cisco grade, if I can say that. It's absolutely solid. They have a new smoke detector, LoRaWAN-based smoke detector, which meets the UK regulations. So for interlink, and that's another great area actually in the UK. You have to, for example, as a housing association, you sort of go out and manually test every year. If you've got that information coming over the air from the smoke detector, it completely transforms it. So yeah, check those guys out in
Okay.
France.
I mean, I would expect anything in France to be ahead of the curve. That's where the whole thing started. So good to hear. There's no surprise there. Let's see. As we wrap this thing up, is there anything that you've seen from combining different pieces of data that's been surprising to you? I know that you've done the temperature and humidity to check for mold growth. Is there anything else where you're like, oh yeah, we did this thing and I didn't understand at the beginning how powerful it would be to kind of stack these two pieces of data on top of each other, but we unlock some new insights because of it.
That's a great point actually. An area in the UK which is called optimized retrofit. So basically, you're going in with say a property what was built in 1930 or 40. You're putting insulation in there, you're changing the heat in, new windows, you're improving the efficiency. So an area that so you need to measure how much water the property's using, how much electric, gas, and then in each room the thermal efficiency of temperature rising and then the heat decay there. And I think what makes it really easy now with the sort of the way AI machine learning's exploded, you can basically just, dump that data in there. It'll do all the calculations really easy for you and get out. So you get almost like a 3D kind of picture. But actually, just remembered something. At the housing association, we put people counters onto the blocks of flats just out of curiosity, seeing what the kind of the data was like with people going in and out. Yeah, and we could see this natural sine wave. So people going to work on a Monday, coming home, and it was just like a sine wave like this. And on the weekend, it would die down. And there was one block in particular. All of a sudden, every 2 weeks, the footfall would shoot straight up and then back down again. And we thought there was something wrong with the hardware. We thought there was something wrong with the kit, but that was absolutely fine. And what was going on in that block? There was what we call in the UK people coming over. It's called county lines. They were dealing drugs from the block, basically. So from that data, we managed to analyze a specific set of person information, which would flag this behavior. So the gangs were coming over the border from England, dropping all the bulk sort of drugs off to be distributed from the block. So that was very interesting. I believe they used that data in court as well.
Oh, that's rad. That's cool. I'm sure that must have
Yeah,
correlated with when payday hits because when money's there, that's typically when it happens.
Yeah, it always sticks in my mind, that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't expect it.
No, very cool. Dean, thanks so much for making the time and coming on. It's been fascinating to get to talk to you. Super cool to talk to someone who's been in the game for so long and just see how you've been able to use LoRaWAN across the board for all these different businesses. Thanks so much, man.
Thanks, Nick. Brilliant. Thank you. Take care.
That's it for the Business of LoRaWAN. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show and want to learn more, the podcast home on the web is metsci.show. That's METSCI.show. There you'll find calculators to estimate the impact of IoT usage on your business, be able to make guest suggestions if you know someone who you think should come on the show, and easily get in touch with me. If you think the show is useful for LoRaWAN, please leave a review wherever you listen to this. Ratings and reviews really help podcasts grow. Finally, an enormous thanks to our sponsor, the IoT Working Group at the Helium Foundation, for supporting this show. If you want to try LoRaWAN out for yourself without asking anyone permission, you can sign up for a Medio Scientific account at console.medioscientific.com and get your first 400 data credits for free. That's enough to run a sensor for about a year if you're sensing once a day. Right on. See you on the next show.